Video game cartridges, necklaces, watches, and clocks. Supposed simply ordinary household items. Can they be haunted? Here's 4 stories. Next time you pick up one of these items, think twice. The haunted Nintendo cartridge. So my boyfriend and I are big gamers, but since university has started back, we haven't been able to spend a lot of time together. Well, one Saturday, we had planned to go to a flea market I'd heard about and go game hunting and spend the rest of the day playing together like we had over the summer. When we were there, I found a classic Legend of Zelda cartridge and knew I just had to have it. I'm a giant Zelda fan. I know this sounds cliche and you're expecting me to tell you the worker said I could just have it and not to bring it back, with an odd tone in his voice, but that's not what happened. I paid for it and was told I had a week-long warranty, and if I found a problem with the game, to bring it back and I could have another game of equal or lesser value. After that, my boyfriend and I strolled around the flea market for fun, and he bought some beads that expanded in water. He said that we could have a bead fight once it got big and squishy. When we got home, we popped the cartridge into my Nintendo and began to play. After 2 hours or so, we stopped and ate dinner at Red Robin's. When he dropped me off at home, he told me to go find some secrets in the game, but he was heading home for the night. When I turned on the Nintendo, I saw that our file had been erased. I thought, great, its battery ran dry. I'll have to send it back when the flea market opens up again next Saturday. But to double check, I made a new file and saved it. Then I turned it off and back on. The file was still there. I sent my boyfriend a text telling him this, and he said he didn't mind restarting because it was only a new reason to spend another Saturday on my couch spending time with his favorite person. So I continued off with my day. The next day I come home and the kitchen and bedroom lights are off. I usually leave those on for the dogs. I also found the tulip-scented wax that I put in my scent lamp splashed onto my pillow. I called my mom to see if she had come home from work at any point in the day. She said she hadn't. So at this point, I'm a little creeped out, but brushed it off. Maybe I forgot to leave the lights on, right? So a few weeks go by and things are pretty normal until one night I'm playing video games. Mom had a date that night and told me she wasn't coming home that night. So I'm playing my Xbox 360 and out of nowhere I hear my dog yelp and look over to see one of my Nintendo controllers had flown across the room and hit my dog, who was hiding in the corner with the controller at her feet. That I could not brush off with a possible reason, so I shouted, "If you're real, stop hurting my dogs or I'm getting rid of the cartridge." And ever since then, the dogs haven't been hurt. But my door locks keeps coming undone and the air conditioning keeps switching off and the TV will turn off, and if the door is cracked, it'll slowly be shut with a rough slam. Could this really be my game cartridge, even though the spirit has calmed down? Is this something that I should allow to continue? Triangle-shaped necklace that followed me. It all started about a year ago after my friend's dad died. I was homeless but had a job, and my buddy had asked me to move in to help cover bills and everything. Once I had my couple bags of clothes moved in, we decided to go downtown to this old insane asylum that turned into a retirement home that turned into an apartment complex. I guess they didn't have enough money to keep building up, been empty for years. We went downstairs into the basement and we instantly got a feeling as if we were being followed. Now, I'm not scared of anything, honestly, but something kept feeling every time we turned around to walk away that it would start following us again. So immediately I turn around and start running, hoping to run into whoever was following us. I ran for a couple seconds down the hall and there was nothing. I decided to shrug it off, thinking the dark was getting the best of me. So I meet back up with my buddy after a few minutes and we get to this old room where I guess they kept dead bodies back in the day. Looked like something in a funeral home. I decided to open all of the doors and they were all empty except for the last one. I found a necklace. It was an old hemp-like string with a triangle pottery at least the size of my hand on it. As we looked at this necklace and as soon as I picked it up, we instantly heard someone talking behind us. We turned around thinking that we were busted by police, but no one ever came around the corner. As we leave, there was a constant feeling someone was following us. At this point, it was so bad, my buddy told me I should run back and put the necklace back in the door and come back. So I said okay and started back down the hallway and put the necklace back. Now, as soon as I turned around after putting the necklace back, the door slammed shut. Me, thinking it's my buddy playing jokes on me, decided to kick the door and tried calling his name to open it. Nothing but silence. After a few minutes of jiggling the door handle and pushing with all of my might, the door just suddenly popped open and I walked out to see my buddy turning down the corner coming to check on me. I told him what happened and he swears it wasn't him. We leave and go home. A few nights after that happened, things started happening around my house. At first, I just shrugged it off, but things just kept happening. We joked around at first saying that my buddy's dad was haunting us and messing with us, but then it would just get worse. At night, my dog would wake up and start growling and barking at the closet, which didn't have a door on it. Once again, I shrugged off thinking my dog's barking at my cat or a mouse or something. Next night, same thing happens again. This time my dog was asleep and I was playing Xbox One and I turned around thinking I heard my dog move. But when I turned around, my dog woke up out of his sleep and started barking hysterically at my closet again. My roommate walks in my room and looks at me with this really weird face. I asked him what's up and he just looks at the closet and points, turning around and went back into his room. I immediately jump up and walk into his room asking him why he walked in and didn't say anything. But he was in his bed, dead asleep. At this point, I'm kind of getting scared a little bit. I walked into my room with the dog still going crazy and started looking where he pointed. As I walked towards my closet, my jacket, the one I was wearing the night we went out, fell to the floor. I looked back at the dog, who suddenly yelps and runs out of the door with tail tucked in her butt. I start going crazy, yelling at my closet, screaming, "You're not welcome here. Get the fuck out of my closet and crawl back to whatever you came from." I was just going off. My roommate walks into my room and asks what's wrong. I told him about him coming into my room and pointing at the closet, and he just stares at me like I'm dumb. He didn't remember doing that, so I go pick up my jacket off the floor and the necklace that I put back into the door falls out of my pocket. I look at my roommate and he's looking at me. He said, "I thought you put that back." I told him I did. We both just looked at this necklace and the whole room gets really cold. We both immediately leave the house and stay in a hotel for the night. The next day I go back to the building that the necklace came from, but it was getting torn down. I need help. Every night my dog wakes up and continually barks like it's her job. I still have the necklace and I'm really tired of everything going on. Does anyone know what to do or what not to do? The Gold and Black Watch. Ever since a young age, I had been spiritually inclined. I could sense presences, and at times, where they were located. As I got older, I had a run-in with a shadow man, which made me want to close the door to the spirit realm. However, As I found out after high school, one cannot close that door all the way. I started hearing bangs, footsteps, scratching, talking, and the sensation of being watched when no one was home. I did my research to see if a person can be haunted, for everything that started was either in my old room, which is on the other side of the wall my headboard is at, or my room. I've even been told that my room feels as though you've been transported to another world. It wasn't until recently, August 2013, that I stopped feeling alone physically and spiritually. This is a big change for me because all I remember from a young age was that I've always felt alone despite the large number of friends I had. In fact, come January 2014, I never wanted to socialize with the outside public, for I already had someone with me. When they were around, which was 90% of the time, I felt pure bliss. When they were gone, I could sense that I was alone again. I knew that couldn't be a tulpa or imaginary friend because of my black and gold wristwatch. It, along with my amulets and pocket knife, is the only object I'm constantly wearing. The watch and knife I remove from my being at night and place it on the bedside table. Then one day I woke up to find that my watch had lost at least 4 hours. I couldn't understand why. It was a brand new watch. The battery was new. I don't sleepwalk, and so I had no way of reaching over, stopping the watch, and then restarting it hours later. I just figured the cold night had slowed the battery, put it on, and I really thought nothing of it. Until it happened again, this time on a warm night. I started to search for an explanation, but found none other than the fact that the watch might be faulty. I had hoped not, for I really loved it. The hours it stalled were at random, but all when I fell asleep. Eventually, I chalked it up to something having attached itself to me, and chuckled each time it happened. Although it threw me for a loop once, I wanted to get up at 7, and I did, judging by my watch. After roughly 5 incidences, my watch ceased losing time. I kept the hour well into September. I had gone on a vacation with my girlfriend to a house with a malicious-like spirit upstairs. We fought a lot. I got smacked in the face, and by the end of it, I just wanted to go home. I felt alone, abused, and unwanted. As soon as I walked through my bedroom door, I wept. I felt love. I felt as if everything was right again. Then, as if on cue, the next day my watch had stalled. I joked to myself that at least someone had missed me. It hasn't stalled once since the night of my return. It would be great help if someone could give me some insight on this. I would very much appreciate it. Grandpa's grandfather clock. When I was a young child, I spent many a summers at my grandparents' house in Lasalle, Ontario. They had an old redwood cheddar and angel brick house with a large woodland behind them. I played and made forts in the woods. This was the late 70s, early 80s, and even then, time had stood still for years in these woods. Old scrap antique car holes were hidden among the vines. Streams filled with pikefish wandered through the woods. Wild berries, grapes, and milk pods were abundant. The forest seemed surreal and stretched on forever. The forest actually crossed the Lasalle town limits, from the Detroit River to the opposite side where it ended on the outskirts of Windsor. It was about 3 miles deep and had a few scattered farm fields along the outer edges. A wonderful place to be as a young child. Besides the forest, the other thing that I remembered about my grandparents' house was the grandfather clock that stood in the hallway. It had been made by my grandmother's cousin from a kit that was bought from Sears. I think it was built in the 1930s, so being 40 to 50 years old at the time, my grandfather would constantly be fixing it. It had 5 or 7 different chimes, and sometimes they worked, sometimes not. Often, Granddad would be working on it, and I would get to see the innards. They were so complex, with little gears and shafts, weights, springs, hammers, and chains. I can remember several times in my youth trying to make heads or tails of how the gears worked. They made no mechanical sense to me. The connections they made and the way they worked just did not seem to be functional, so it was a magic clock to me. Something that is always mysterious and beautiful to look at. Well, the years passed, and God collected my grandfather at a young age in his 50s. He had a very long run with a dreadful illness that had him bedridden for many years. When he died, the clock toned all of the chime selections at midnight for 3 nights in a row. Then it did not work anymore. The clock did, but not the chimes. We all thought this was crazy, but the event passed without further incidents. Many years later, it came time for my grandmother to move out of the house that my grandfather had built. It was a very sad day, but she had found a condo close to us and was quite happy. The clock was moved out to the condo and no longer worked. It had become a statue or piece of furniture to look at. Now a funny thing happened. The person who moved into Grandpa's old house got to know the neighbor, who we were friends with. It got back to us that the new owners would wake in the night and hear a clock ticking. On a few occasions, they would even hear the hand movement cycle to move the hands. They traced the sound to the hallway where the grandfather clock had once stood. This went on for about a year and then eventually stopped after the new owners did a massive remodel of the house. To make this story even weirder, a few years ago we lost my grandmother. After the funeral, we returned to her condo, and in the middle of talking about the good old times, the grandfather clock chimed. It chimed all of the chime selections one after another. We all looked at each other wide-eyed as the clock was not working at the time. No ticks, no talks, nothing. And it has been many years since the clock was even wound. Regardless, we all kind of had a freak-out moment. The clock now rests at my mother and father's home. I spent many hours working with it to get the innards cleaned up and working again. We even had a clock guy come over and work with it to fine-tune it and replace the hammers. So now it works perfect. My mom uses it from time to time. Sometimes she will stop the clock to get a rest from the sounds. As it is a noisy clock when it is working, every now and then it will start up by itself and give us all a wow moment. The clock has come to be dear to me. I often wonder if our family has a spirit connection to it, or if it is linked to the afterlife. Is it controlled by the ghosts of its former owners? I wonder a lot about the clock. Will it chime when my parents pass? Will it chime when I come to pass?